Really common problem that we're fixing today. We've got one of these lever controlled kind of pop-up waste things on this basin. It's controlled by this push-pull rod at the back of the tap, and basically it just won't go up and down, and it's kind of stuck in this half open position. So hopefully this should be a nice easy one. I'll show you what we need to do to fix this. Hiya folks, and welcome back to the show. This is a really common snagging problem that you run into with these kind of pop-up wastes. It's controlled with this kind of lever thing at the back, and as you can see, the lever just won't go up and down at all. It's completely seized in that position. I don't actually fit these types of taps anymore. Generally, grower taps are really good, but these kind of lever push-pull things, I've just had too many problems with them over the years, so I don't fit those anymore. So I've gone on to fitting a different type of waste, and I'm actually going to be talking about that in much more detail in a future video, so do hit subscribe if you want to know about that. But let's get on and fix this one. So this is a little bit difficult to film, but we're looking underneath the sink here, and as you can see, we've got a bar that comes kind of downwards, and we've got a bar that comes across from the back of the basin waste, and basically the problem is that this bar here is hitting off the wall, and it's hitting off the wall so much that it's actually ground a little hole in the wall at the back, which I'll have to fix that as well. Interestingly, it didn't have this problem when I first fitted it, because it did work for the first year, so I'm not entirely sure what's happened, but as you can see, I have even left a mark on it, so obviously I was intending to chop that off and I just forgot. It's just kind of one of those snagging things that happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this assembly out completely, so I'm going to have to undo this little screw here. It is actually a posi drive screw on this one, which is good. Unfortunately, getting the screwdriver in and operating the camera is a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to loosen that screw. You don't need to take it all the way out. You just need to loosen it a little bit, like that. And now what I can do is pull this push rod out all the way from the top and get that out the road, hopefully. Okay, that won't come out because it's hitting off the tiles at the top, which again, it's one of the problems with these sort of wastes. I'm really quite sick of them. So yeah, okay, it's fine. We can leave it in place and I can take it out in one kind of assembly, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to have to do is reach in behind here and follow this push rod all the way to the back of the basin waste, and you should feel there's a little nut there. It's kind of you'll see once I've taken it out. And you can undo that and you can lift the whole assembly out. Right, that's loose. Don't lose any bits off it. I'll show you what I mean once I get it all out, because that's a little bit tricky to show you. So now that whole assembly should be able to come out, he says. Sometimes if you take the plug out, you can actually get access a little bit easier. You can see the rod, that's the end of the rod that we're trying to take out, but sometimes this can be a little bit fiddly. So I'm running into another problem here, and I'd rather be honest about it, because you will run into this sort of problem every now and then. Basically, the push rod is too long to get it out. I'm going to end up actually damaging the waste if I put any more force on this. So what I'm going to have to do is drill a small hole in the wall here, so that the push rod can get all the way out. You could try cutting it in situ, but that's really difficult. I'll explain why in a minute. So what I'm going to do, I need to filler this wall anyway, so I'm going to just drill a little hole around this area here, and then hopefully that'll be far enough to back it out so that I can get this rod out. So around there should be good. I'll try and mark the wall a little bit. Just there. Right. I'll try and come at it from the other side so you can actually see what I'm doing. No, that's not doable from that side. As per usual, with this sort of thing, I would suggest you use a blunt masonry bit. I know that there's nothing behind this wall, so I know I'm relatively safe doing that, but if you're not 100%, use a blunt masonry bit. Come on, so close, come on. Oh yes. As I say, do not lose any bits of it when you do that, but you can see I've got the whole assembly out. And now I should be able to take this push rod out as well, although I don't particularly need to, but I'll give it a clean up while I'm at it. So essentially the way this works, this rubber kind of rubbery plastic bit goes into the back of the basin waste, and then this little ball joint here sits in that, and then that is the little nut I was telling you about that screws into the back of the basin waste. And then obviously we've just got the two push rods. It's as simple as that, and it just creates that kind of lever mechanism. So what we need to do is make this push rod here much shorter. It doesn't need to be anywhere near that length. I don't think I've ever fitted one of these where it needs to be that long, but sometimes you can get away with it, leaving it at the supplied length, but more often than not you do need to cut it a little bit short so it doesn't hit the wall. Now the tricky thing here is that this is extremely hard steel, and I mean you can try cutting it with a hacksaw, but you'll be on it forever. So I prefer to do it using an angle grinder, and to do that I just pop it into a vise. If you don't have a vise, you could potentially use like a pair of mole grips or strong pliers or whatever, but just bear in mind this is very, very strong steel. So that is firmly clamped in place, and we know it's this end that we need to cut off. I'm going to take a good inch or so off the end of that, and that should give us more than enough clearance. My tool of choice for this job is the angle grinder. It'll make really quick work of this. If you don't have an angle grinder, as I say, if you can clamp it somewhere, you can maybe use a hacksaw. It'll take a little while, but this should get through it quite quickly. So then we're left with, no, that'll be hot, but we're left with extremely sharp edges on that. Again, what you can do is just use the angle grinder to grind that down, or you can just use a little file. And that'll kind of do just to knock those sharp edges off. But because I've got easy access to one, I'm just going to round it off a little bit more, just using my bench kind of disc sander thing. By the way, a little safety tip here. You'll notice I was doing that work on this side of the disc rather than that side. And partly that's because it's easier to get access, but it's also because this disc is rotating anti-clockwise, which means it's coming up in that direction and down in that direction. And that means if I was working on it this way, there's an inclination for it to get drawn down into this gap and cause all sorts of problems. It could flip up into your face or anything, which you don't want. On this side, the worst that can really happen is that it kind of flips upwards a little bit, but it's better to do that than it gets jammed down in this kind of mechanism here, because that would be bad news. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. As long as there's no sharp edges, that's the main thing. I'm then just going to do a really quick test reassembly to check that it all still kind of fits. So I'm going to pop the push rod in first of all, because what I don't want to do is fix it all and then discover it still doesn't fit. It's kind of the fiddly bit here. Actually, I'll do that after. Put this in first. Yeah, that's going to be fine. I've got loads of clearance at the back there now. So I'm going to fill these holes and then put it all back together, because otherwise these bits are just going to kind of be in the road. So I've just mixed up a little bit of easy fill here, which is my filler of choice for jobs like this, little filling jobs. I've made a video all about using Easy Fill, so I'll include a link to that in the description, but it's perfect for this sort of work. I'll just scrape off a little bit of this loose stuff, try and get a bit of a chamfer on the edge of where I've drilled. As always with Easy Fill, what you're looking to do is leave it a little bit proud so you can sand it back, because this sands really easily. So I'm just going to leave that to dry. That'll take overnight to dry, so come back to you once that's all set and we can sand it back and get everything put back together. Oh, and one little thing worth mentioning, do not use your basin while you're doing this, because at the moment there's basically a hole in the back that isn't sealed, and if you use the basin, water will come out of that hole at the back where the ball joint fastens into the back of the waist. So for the minute, this basin is out of action. So that dried pretty well. As you can probably see, I did temporarily pop this push rod back in just so that I could use the sink. So I'm just going to take that back out. All I would say is be really careful that you don't lose this bushing down the back of the sink or anything, because the whole mechanism won't work without this. So then just before reassembly, I'm going to give everything a nice little clean down. I managed to get a little bit of paint on the end of that. That'll just scrape off. And then I'm just going to take some silicone grease and pop that all over this little ball joint here. I'll just rub that in. And then I'm going to first very carefully put this bush back in. So I'm doing this pretty much all by feel because I can't see anything behind here. So I'm going to very carefully pop that black bushing back in to the back of the waist. Do not drop it. If you do, you're going to have to buy a whole new waist if you lose that bit. And then I'm just going to take the push rod and push that through. Now that that's in place, that will stop that bushing from falling out. And then I'll just take the little nut and pop that over the top, and just be really careful not to cross thread it, and we can tighten that up so that's finger tight, but you know, tight enough that it doesn't leak. So don't overdo it, but it should be able to move nice and freely. And I'm going to leave that in the plug up position, so the plug open position. Again, we'll give the push rod a little wipe, make sure that's all nice and clean. Pop that back down the back. All the way at the bottom. Might as well pop the plug back in. That should be sitting up at the minute. And then we're just going to manhandle this little kind of connection piece on the bit that screws into place. So the screw place kind of goes on the vertical rod, if that makes sense. So there's two holes in this. There's like a big wide hole and there's a smaller hole. The smaller hole is the one that goes on the vertical rod, and we'll just kind of pop that roughly in place at the minute. We can adjust it later, but we'll try there. Tighten it up. Again, don't over tighten it because it's only plastic. And you know what? That is pretty much as perfect as it can get. That works absolutely brilliantly now. One last little thing to check, just make sure there's no leaks or anything, so I'm just going to try it with the plug shut. And we'll just let some water out and just check for leaks around the back of where the nut kind of connects to the back of the waist, and make sure that there's no water creeping out anywhere, that that's all bone dry, all fixed. No problems whatsoever. That's all looking absolutely great. Job's a good one. I would suggest that you come back in a couple of days and just double check for leaks around the back of the waist, but other than that, we are done. As per usual, folks, if you've enjoyed that, do hit subscribe. It would be lovely to have you on board as a subscriber to the channel. Look after one another, be nice to each other. We shall see you next time. Tatty bye.